It's about love being hit by lightning. I mean, this is about a gentleman whose heart is so big and his approach is so authentic.
Most fans have no idea that the very talent that made Jim Carrey a global icon actually began as a coping mechanism. For years, he appeared as the carefree and wild star who could turn any strange moment into a joke. But behind that humor was a darkness he kept hidden, pain so deep that no one could have guessed it. Now, after decades of silence, Jim is finally revealing the truth. What was the secret struggle he carried alone all these years? Join us as he uncovers what fans have long suspected, the dark story behind his vanishing act. Jim Carrey was once the king of Hollywood comedy, a man everyone believed could turn any film into a hit. But by the mid-2010s, something strange happened. Jim Carrey slowly disappeared from public life, and the man who once lit up every stage faded from the spotlight. For millions of fans, the question was simple: what happened to Jim Carrey? For the first time, people close to him are revealing the dark truth behind his disappearance. Despite having a fortune estimated around $180 million, Jim no longer lives like a Hollywood superstar. According to a Sun Showbiz insider, he now prefers a quiet, hidden life in Hawaii. He reportedly uses a fake name, spends long periods off-grid, and sometimes even forgets what day it is. For a man once surrounded by cameras begging for his attention, this extreme privacy shocked many who knew him. Despite his disappearance, offers never stopped coming. Studios still send him 3 or 4 scripts every year, hoping to bring him back. But no matter how big the project or how large the paycheck, Jim says no to all of them. The Sonic movies remain his only film credits of the past 10 years, a stunning change for someone once at the center of the industry. Now 63, Jim has hinted several times that he may retire from acting completely. Turning 60 was a heavy blow for him. According to the insider, that birthday forced him to face his own humanity and the speed at which life moves. It pushed him into deep reflection about happiness and what he wants the rest of his life to look like. It made him realize how fast time flies and made him question everything. He felt a strong need to disconnect from the modern world. He doesn't want to be part of that world anymore. He's on a spiritual journey, trying to understand himself, his life, and his legacy. But the truth behind his retreat is far more complicated than simply wanting to retire. Friends say Jim has struggled with emotional darkness for years, and as he grew older, carrying that weight became harder. Fame magnified the pressure. Hollywood demanded constant happiness from a man who wasn't always happy inside. His disappearance is the result of many layers of struggle that the world doesn't get to see. What are some of the troubles he endured in the course of his career? The dark chapter that ended Jim Carrey's film career. The beginning of the darkness began when Irish makeup artist Catriona White met Jim Carrey in 2012, during a time when she was still legally married to another man. Despite the complications in her personal life, she and Jim quickly developed a connection that grew into a serious relationship. Their bond was strong but turbulent, and they broke up and reunited more than once. Sadly, their story took a heartbreaking turn in 2015. Just 3 years after they met, Catriona died at the age of 30 from a prescription drug overdose. Her death came only 4 days after she and Jim had ended their relationship for the second time. A suicide note she left behind revealed just how deeply she had been affected by the breakup. She wrote that she was completely heartbroken by his decision, giving the world a glimpse of the emotional pain she had been carrying. Not long after her passing, an old letter written by Catriona in 2013 was discovered on her iPad. In it, she accused Jim of introducing her to cocaine, prostitutes, mental abuse, and disease. The accusations shocked the public and caused massive controversy. Jim Carrey strongly denied every claim, insisting that the letter did not reflect the truth of their relationship. But regardless of his denial, the impact on his public image was severe. At the time, Jim released 2 movies in 2016: the detective drama Dark Crimes, which received a shocking 0% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and The Bad Batch, a dystopian thriller in which he only made a cameo appearance. Both films failed at the box office, and many believed the scandal surrounding Cathriona's death played a major part in the negative reception. Before this period, Jim was known for major hits like The Mask, Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and many more. He was considered one of the most bankable comedic actors in Hollywood. But after the tragedy and the public backlash that followed, his energy and passion for acting began to fade. Although he later played the villain Dr. Robotnik in the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, Jim openly admitted he took the role mainly for financial reasons, not artistic interest. Other than those films, Jim has barely appeared on screen. His last major project was Kidding, a dark comedy series that ran from 2018 to 2020. The show was praised for his performance, but after it ended, Jim stepped away from acting almost completely. With studios controlling creative decisions more tightly than ever, he feels boxed in and uninspired. Because of this, he has little desire to return to the spotlight. But his reason is also more grounded in his childhood than anyone would have guessed. What were the experiences that shaped him into the man he is today? Jim Carrey's true story. Away from the spotlight, Jim has always been a far more complex and private person. Born in Canada, Jim spent his early years in Scarborough, Ontario, attending Blessed Trinity Catholic Elementary School. His family later moved to Burlington, Ontario, where he went to Aldershot High School. During his teenage years, the Carreys faced extreme financial hardship, even becoming homeless at one point and living in a Volkswagen van. Jim and his brother John spent months in a tent at Charles Daly Park on the Lake Ontario shore. Their situation improved once Percy secured a job at the Titan Wheels tire factory in Scarborough. To contribute, Jim had to work as a janitor and security guard at the factory, doing overnight 8-hour shifts while living in a house across the street. Eventually, the family moved back to Scarborough, where Jim attended Agincourt Collegiate Institute. However, he dropped out on his 16th birthday to pursue comedy. He began performing in downtown Toronto while still working at the factory, dreaming of bigger opportunities. In a 2007 interview, Jim thought back to that moment and revealed that had his comedy career not succeeded, he might have ended up working at Hamilton's Dofasco steel mill, which he often looked at across Burlington Bay, seeing it as the symbol of great jobs in Canada. But from a young age, he showed a natural flair for comedy. A lifelong fan of Monty Python, Jim later credited sketches like The Funniest Joke in the World as formative influences, noting Michael Palin's performance as uncannily reminiscent of his own style. At 8, he began making faces in front of mirrors and discovered a talent for impressions. By age 10, he boldly wrote to Carol Burnett, claiming he was already a master of impressions and should be considered for a role on her show. Though he received only a form letter reply, the experience thrilled him. Jim moved to Los Angeles in the 1980s to find fame in Hollywood. By the early 1990s, that dream had exploded into reality. At the peak of his success, Jim was worth over $300 million and headlined blockbuster hits like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Behind the laughter and iconic performances, Jim Carrey learned profound life lessons. At a 2014 commencement speech at the Maharishi University of Management, he shared, "I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love." Determined to succeed in comedy, Jim endured countless failures and the sting of being booed off stage. Obsessed with understanding audiences, he realized that people simply want to be free from worry. This insight became the foundation of his comedic persona, on and off screen. His persistence paid off in Canada, eventually leading to being discovered by Rodney Dangerfield while performing in Toronto. Brought to Las Vegas as an opening act, Carrey quickly gained fame in the U.S., landing a role on In Living Color. He went on to star in hits such as Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and Man on the Moon, cementing his superstardom. Carrey attributes much of his success to perseverance and the power of manifestation, famously writing himself a $10 million check early in his career, which he received a decade later for Dumb and Dumber. Open about his struggles with depression and major depressive disorder, Carrey described the low-level despair of taking Prozac. You're not getting any answers, but you're living okay and smiling at the office. But it's a low level of despair. He later eliminated drugs, alcohol, and coffee, turning instead to spirituality and art, finding that emotional storms no longer consumed him. This was the grass to grace story everyone knew about Jim Carrey, but life got a lot more scary and complicated after he attained the dreams he had once longed for. A more turbulent personal life. Jim Carrey's personal life was much more complicated than the characters he played. He married actress Melissa Wummer in 1987, and together they welcomed their daughter Jane, now a 38-year-old singer and mother to Jim's grandson, Jackson Riley Santana. After divorcing Melissa, Jim married his Dumb and Dumber co-star Lauren Holly in 1996. He later dated actress and model Jenny McCarthy for 5 years and also had high-profile romances with Renee Zellweger and January Jones. Jim has always been open about the challenges he faced growing up. Diagnosed with ADHD as a child, he once said the condition helped fuel his creativity, but also came with struggles. Over the years, he has spoken about his battles with depression, as well as his efforts to stay sober from drugs and alcohol. His first wife, Melissa, once said something deeply revealing. The smile he wears is the biggest mask of all. To many who knew him closely, this was the truth. As one insider explained, Jim often faced sad clown moments, times when life behind the scenes was much heavier than the cheerful roles he played. In 2015, Jim experienced one of the most painful losses of his life, the death of his ex-girlfriend, Catriona White. Heartbroken, he served as a pallbearer at her funeral and described her as a delicate Irish flower, too sensitive for this soil. Later, wrongful death lawsuits were filed by Catriona's estranged husband and her mother, accusing Jim of terrible things. Though the lawsuits were dismissed, the painful chapter marked a turning point in his life. His last public relationship with actress Ginger Gonzaga ended in 2019, and he is thought to be single today. Seeking peace, Jim sold his massive Brentwood mansion for $17 million in 2024 after drastically lowering the price from its original $28.9 million listing. Recently, Jim made a rare appearance at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony in Los Angeles. Fans were surprised by how fresh-faced he looked, sparking rumors of Botox or a facelift, though there is no evidence he has had any procedures. Whatever the case, many agreed he simply looked happy, calm, and at peace. While many celebrities accept public events and paid appearances for easy income, Jim has stepped away from that world almost completely. His focus now is on finding spiritual balance, peace, and a simpler kind of happiness, and distancing himself from the spotlight seems to help him maintain that stability. Speaking of spiritual balance, Jim recently made headlines for an interview that confused a lot of fans and got people questioning a lot. What made the interview so complicated? From comedy to consciousness. Jim's transformative journey began during the 1999 filming of Man on the Moon, where he portrayed Andy Kaufman. The experience led to an ego disintegration and spiritual awakening, explored in Netflix's Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. Jim recalls a moment at the beach before filming when he sensed Kaufman tap him on the shoulder saying, "Sit down, I'll be doing my movie," prompting a complete surrender to the role. By the end, he felt reborn, observing his ego with clarity. Who's Jim Carrey? Oh yeah, he doesn't exist. There's just a relative manifestation of consciousness appearing. This reset of consciousness inspired a deep immersion in art. In his short film, I Needed Color, Carrey explains that painting became an unstoppable process. Making art is not really a choice. I'm being painted, and I'm being expressed, and I'm being created, and there's little me involved. For Carrey, comedy, consciousness, and creativity are intertwined, shaping a life that transcends fame, centered on freedom, expression, and spiritual clarity. Jim Carrey described a phenomenon he calls creative flooding, a state in which an individual feels overwhelmed by too much spirit or energy, resulting in an inundation of creativity. In these moments, the mind struggles to contain the flood of inspiration and insight. Historical figures like Vincent van Gogh and Sylvia Plath are thought to have experienced similar states, channeling intense inner energy into extraordinary, but often turbulent, creative output. His open discussions about his spiritual breakthroughs have opened doors for others to explore and express their inner struggles. His transparency provides a roadmap for younger generations facing rising mental health challenges, showing that pain and suffering can be transformed into personal growth and creative expression. By sharing his own experiences, Carrey challenges the conventional approach of traditional psychology, which often reduces crises of the spirit to purely pathological problems. Currently, there is no widely accepted framework for understanding or supporting those undergoing what some call spiritual emergencies, leaving many feeling isolated, misunderstood, and unsupported. This lack of understanding can exacerbate suffering, sometimes leading individuals toward psychiatric institutions or even self-harm. Not everyone truly believed Jim's story about a spiritual awakening. When he stepped into the spotlight claiming he had seen through the illusion of life, the reaction was immediate and divided. Jim said he had been spending time with spiritual teachers like Byron Katie. Eckhart Tolle even brought him onto television to share his new clarity. On talk shows like Jimmy Kimmel, he stared into the audience with a calm, mysterious gaze. Then came the moment that shook everything: his baffling interview with Kat Sadler on the Fashion Week red carpet. Days later, he released a softer, gentler message, as if trying to calm the storm he had created. Across social media, especially in spaces filled with yoga, mindfulness, and spiritual ideas, two opposing views quickly formed. They stood apart like oil and water. The first group, the majority, believed Jim had truly awakened. To them, he had pierced the illusion of fame and ego. They loved that someone so mainstream finally got it. They insisted he had seen the truth, that everything is one unified consciousness, playing with itself. Deepak Chopra might talk about it, but Jim, they insisted, radiated it. He was detached, unbothered, and free. And at a moment when the world felt divided and lost, they welcomed him as a needed voice. The second group saw something very different. They believed Jim was deluded or emotionally unwell. Filmmaker and spirituality critic Jeff Brown described Jim's red carpet comments, saying the interviewer didn't exist or that personalities weren't real, as classic spiritual bypassing. Brown argued Jim wasn't transcending anything. He was avoiding pain. He believed Jim needed to step away from self-negation, drop the spiritual mask, and heal his heart. So the question hung in the air: was Jim awake? Or Was he lost? For many people leaning toward the second view, the debate wasn't just philosophical. They couldn't ignore Jim's behavior with Sadler, circling her, towering over her, barking at her, making her uncomfortable while she tried to do her job. To them, it didn't matter what message he claimed to be delivering. What mattered was the power dynamic. He could act that way only because of his status, and she had no choice but to endure it. But beyond those two camps stood a third perspective, one rarely discussed. It asked a simple question. What if both groups were assuming something that might not be true? Both sides seemed convinced Jim believed every word he said. Yet Jim Carrey is an actor, someone trained to deliver emotional, transformative experiences through performance. His entire life has been built around entering the zone, slipping into states that look profound, intense, or transcendent. Audiences pay him to do exactly that. If he speaks like a sage, how can anyone be sure he isn't simply slipping into another role? After all, even great actors admit that the best performances don't feel like acting at all. And the audience, swept up in emotion, forgets they are watching a performance. The debate became even stranger when people realized some of Jim's supposedly spontaneous truths on the red carpet were borrowed from a speech he had given years earlier at a university connected to the Maharishi tradition. Was he speaking from enlightenment or reciting lines? Many fans insisted they could see his awakening in his eyes, his smile, his stillness. But appearance is unreliable. A calm gaze doesn't reveal a person's inner world any more than a beard or a soothing voice does. The theater of spirituality often depends on posture, charisma, and optics, and celebrity magnifies all of that. While fans have divided opinions, some of Jim Carrey's past actions have made it hard to see beyond the comedian and pot stirrer. What are some of his controversial moments that have made people have such strong opinions about him? Jim Carrey's most controversial moments. While beloved for his acting, some of his actions have drawn criticism, highlighting his complex and outspoken nature. One of the most talked about aspects of Jim's later career has been his artwork. He turned to painting as a form of therapy, but in 2018, his work took on a distinctly political tone. He created portraits of public figures like Mark Zuckerberg, Donald Trump, and White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. While some praised the pieces for their humor and sharp commentary, others criticized him for being cruel or bullying, particularly in the way he incorporated Sanders' faith into the artwork. Jim has also been controversial in his career choices. His role in Kick-Ass 2 placed him in a violent, edgy film, but he refused to promote the movie following the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. He felt he could not support that level of violence in light of the tragedy, even though others involved in the film disagreed. His decision reflected a moral stance that some admired, while others viewed it as an unusual withdrawal from professional obligations. Another contentious chapter was his involvement in the anti-vaccination movement. Alongside then-partner Jenny McCarthy, Jim campaigned against certain vaccine ingredients, claiming a link to autism. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence that vaccines are safe and effective, he persisted, earning significant criticism from medical professionals and the public alike. Some of his most notable feuds arise from the fact that he never shies away from speaking his mind, which has sometimes put him at odds with fellow actors, politicians, and public figures. One of the most publicized conflicts began with the 2022 Oscars, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock on stage. The incident went viral, sparking widespread discussion. Jim openly criticized Smith's actions and Hollywood's response, expressing frustration that fame often shields celebrities from accountability. In an interview with CBS's This Morning, Carrey said that such behavior would not have been tolerated from anyone else and emphasized that physical retaliation over words is unacceptable. While he didn't hold a personal grudge against Smith, Carrey was disheartened by the industry's reaction and the way powerful figures sometimes escape consequences. Jim has also had a tense history with Shia LaBeouf, stemming from the 2014 Golden Globes. During the awards show, Carrey made a joke referencing LaBeouf's recent controversies, including a plagiarism scandal involving his short film HowardCantor.com. The comment, intended as humor, sparked a chaotic exchange on social media. LaBeouf responded with confusing tweets referencing Jim's daughter, Jane, and accused Carrey of neglect, which were quickly disproven. He later apologized and retreated from the public eye, while Carrey remained silent, showing a measured approach to online conflicts. Professional collaborations have also highlighted Jim's clashes. While filming Batman Forever in 1995, Carrey's exuberant performance as the Riddler reportedly clashed with co-star Tommy Lee Jones, who played Two-Face. Jones expressed discomfort with Jim's comedic style, calling it buffoonery. Despite the tension, both actors delivered memorable performances. Jim has recounted the experience with humor, acknowledging that contrasting personalities on set often lead to friction rather than genuine animosity. Jim's outspoken nature extends beyond Hollywood into politics and social commentary. He has clashed with figures like Senator Ted Cruz over provocative political illustrations. In 2018, Jim created a drawing depicting Cruz as a vampire defeated by Beto O'Rourke. Cruz responded sharply, criticizing Carrey's dramatic and confrontational approach. The following year, Carrey sparked further controversy with politically charged artwork, continuing his habit of blending satire, humor, and pointed commentary to highlight issues that matter to him. Tech mogul Mark Zuckerberg has also drawn Jim's attention. In response to the Cambridge Analytica scandal, Jim posted a bold sketch of Zuckerberg with the caption, "Who are you sharing your life with?" highlighting the mishandling of users' personal data. He later deleted his Facebook account and sold his stock, urging others to consider the ethical implications of social media. Jim has also used his artwork to critique political figures like White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders and former President Donald Trump, merging art and activism in ways that provoke both admiration and criticism. Jim's confrontations have also involved his creative collaborators. His role in Kick-Ass 2 sparked a dispute with writer John Romita Jr. Jim publicly criticized the film's violent content following the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy, despite having filmed his scenes beforehand. Romita expressed frustration that Jim's remarks undermined the film and its story, highlighting Jim's tendency to speak candidly even when it courts controversy. Conservative media hosts have frequently criticized Jim. Fox News personalities, including Ainsley Earhardt and Lisa Kennedy Montgomery, have taken issue with his political cartoons and outspoken liberal views, often framing his work as performative or hypocritical. Despite the criticism, Jim remains largely unfazed, continuing to share his opinions and create provocative art without concern for detractors. While his approach may be polarizing, it should Jim's belief in using his voice and platform responsibly, or at least in a way that aligns with his conscience. Speaking of conscience, does Jim have any regrets? Perhaps about the strong opinions he expressed about others, or about actions he later wished he hadn't been involved in? A man with just one regret. Jim Carrey has often spoken about his past with a tone that mixes acceptance and reflection. He has said many times that he does not live with regrets, yet he openly acknowledges that the journey which shaped him also came with heavy physical and emotional costs. In a July 2020 interview with the London Evening Standard, he explained this balance in a single line: "I don't regret. I don't have those things, but I do appreciate the people who have come through my life for the good that they gave me. It simply proved that while he refuses to dwell on guilt or past mistakes, he is not blind to the impact his early years had on both himself and the people around him. Those early years were intense. His breakout performances on In Living Color demanded explosive energy, extreme physicality, and a schedule that pushed him to the limit. Jim has reflected on how those demands affected his marriage and personal life. The pressure to perform, combined with the whirlwind rise of fame, took a toll he only fully understood later. Even so, he chooses to honor those memories without bitterness, recognizing that every strain and sacrifice contributed to the man he eventually became. This contrast between not regretting the past and acknowledging its cost became even clearer during one of the most controversial moments of his career: his involvement in Kick-Ass 2. The film, based on the Image Comics graphic novel, carried a reputation for mixing dark humor with brutal violence. When it was first announced that Jim Carrey would join the 2013 sequel, audiences were unsure what to expect. Jim was known for his elastic comedy and rapid-fire wit, not for swinging a flag-covered mallet or firing a submachine gun. Still, when the movie was released, many viewers agreed that his performance as the volatile Colonel Stars and Stripes was one of the highlights. Although the sequel did not reach the critical success of the first film, it developed a strong cult following, helped in part by Carrey's unpredictable presence. But the excitement around Carrey's role did not last. Shortly after filming ended, the United States experienced one of the darkest days in its modern history. On December 14, 2012, a gunman named Adam Lanza unalived 26 people at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. The tragedy shocked the nation. It left families grieving, communities shattered, and millions questioning how such horror could happen in a place meant to protect children. Even as the country mourned, no meaningful gun control laws were put in place. This weighed heavily on Carrey. Suddenly, the violence portrayed in Kick-Ass 2 felt too close to reality for him to ignore. In June 2013, just months before the film's release, he posted a message on Twitter that changed everything. "I did Kick-Ass a month before Sandy Hook, and now, in all good conscience, I cannot support that level of violence. I am not ashamed of it, but recent events have caused a change in my heart." With that statement, he distanced himself from the film, apologized to everyone involved, and made it clear that his emotional response to Sandy Hook was something he could not push aside. Jim refused to join promotional events for the movie. He stepped back from interviews, red carpet appearances, and any publicity tied to the project. The tragedy had opened his eyes, and it reshaped the direction of his career. From that moment on, he became a strong advocate for gun control, using his platform to speak about the pain caused by gun violence and the need for stronger laws. More importantly, he made a personal decision. He would never again be part of a film that celebrated or relied on excessive violence. And he kept that promise. Since Kick-Ass 2, Jim Carrey has chosen roles that move away from brutality, reflecting a shift not only in his artistic choices, but in his worldview. Through it all, Jim maintains a consistent message: no regrets, but deep awareness. He honors his past without being imprisoned by it. He appreciates the people he has known, the lessons that shaped him, and the moments that forced him to grow. And in the wake of tragedy, he allowed that growth to change him in a way that feels sincere, grounded, and impossible to ignore. Did anything in this video make you see Jim Carrey differently? If yes, what stood out the most? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.